Hey guys, I know you want to talk about training camp practice number 1 under the Packers belts. And this is the Out of Breath Arm Sore Packer Minute, the show where I walk around the neighborhood talking about the Packers and you watch to see if I get offloaded into the afterlife by a cargo van. And of course, we know training camp practice 1. It's like the clouds parted, the skies opened up, the sun shone down on Packer Nation, and we now have football back in Green Bay. Couldn't be a better feeling, but I do have some questions I want to ask that I think will have to be answered during this year's training camp. And this will probably be a 2-part episode because first one I want to talk about, well, maybe it's not the most exciting, but it's exciting kind of secondarily. But I do want to talk about the special teams. And part of the reason I want to talk about that is because I feel fairly positive about where the defense is going to be by the time everything's sorted out. We got some new kids in there, Kevin King, Josh Jones. We brought back Devon House. And we've got returners in Randall Rollins and Gunter that I think we'll be able to be put in the proper roles this year. So I'm a little concerned about the outside linebacker position on defense. But at the same time, I'm fairly positive about the defense. I think we're all pretty positive about the offense. So that leaves the final question. What about special teams? What is going to happen on special teams for this Green Bay Packer unit that at one point last year was last in the league in terms of kick coverage units? Ron Zook continues to get up there and behind the podium, and I guess more and more, the more I see him, the less confidence I have in him. We've got some guys that are special on special teams, so we have to talk about the high points, and those guys are Jeff Janis, who hopefully will come back healthy, and hopefully will make the team. I do think he will make the team, partly because of mostly because of the special teams, because he hasn't made a huge contribution as a wide receiver. Dimitri Goodson, with the ACL, he's in flux. He's another one of the guys that, this Packers team relied on. The special teams really relied on to be one of their better guys. So at that point, the question becomes, who is added, who is lost? Joe Carriage is one of those guys that was, a good special teams player in college in particular. And coming into this season, he's one of those players that must be considered on the bubble as a second fullback. McCarthy likes fullbacks. I would like to see him shift, but he also cross-trains fullbacks and tight ends. So he can use the tight ends at the fullback position when you go inverted bone. So all of this sort of put together, that and the fact Aaron Ripkowski is the clear number 1. And the Packers brought in 3 and drafted 3 rookie running backs, have another 2 undrafted free agents on the team as of now. So what is the future for Joe Carriage? I'm not sure. If he shows himself on special teams, he could end up like Jeff Janis and make a roster spot based on his special teams ability and the fact that, Mike McCarthy does like to keep that extra fullback. I think we can do 1 fullback in Aaron Ripkowski and let Carriage go, but that assumes and requires, I think, one of these rookie running backs, one of these drafted rookie running backs to truly become a force on special teams. Because again, we're talking about special teams, and our special teams were not very good last year, so we have to replace. If you get rid of a guy like Carriage, who actually did a pretty good job, was fairly active on special teams, you've got to replace him with either your Jamal Williams, your Aaron Jones, or your Devontae Mays, perhaps. Because, that would be ideal, because then you can replace a guy who's a fullback with a guy who's a tailback, and now you've got all 3 of your drafted rookie running backs on the squad. And I think that's ideal. I'm just not sure that's going to happen. According to reports, the punt return situation had already reared its ugly head, with Randall Cobb back returning punts already this morning. And I have said for a long time that I think that's the way it may very well shake out when all is said and done, is that Randall Cobb's our punt returner. We need a replacement for Micah Hyde. I'm not sure we find one on the team. I'm not sure we had one on the team. So your guys like Trevor Davis, I was not confident in. However, Randall Cobb, it's far from ideal to be putting him back on punt returns where a guy can get seriously smucked and injured really fast and really easily. So the question remains then on special teams, and this I think is a particularly interesting question, will one of the wide receivers, will one of the running backs, the tailbacks that we brought in the draft, show that they can be the #1 punt returner for the Packers? I think Jeff Janis can do fine as a kick returner. He showed some good things, especially in the Giants game in the playoffs last year. But other than that, the punt returner situation really is leaning back. And I think we're moving back in time when we stick Randall Cobb back at punt return. And Draft and Develop says we should have found a guy by now. We just haven't done that. So this training camp, I think, is particularly important in special teams. And in particular on special teams, we have coverage issues in terms of, do we keep Joe Carriage, or will one of these running backs or wide receivers show some potential in that regard? But then also, who's going to be the punt returner for this team? These are big questions. These go to field position, and we know how important field position is. Yes, I understand that the Green Bay Packers offense is expected to chew up yards, to destroy people. However, the last thing you want is to start in poor field position, and in particular, that's going to be very important when the playoffs roll around, and we're expecting to be in those playoffs. So we need to get our special teams figured out. Here comes a Big Mac truck. Dang. We need to get our special teams figured out, and I'm not sure we're there. Coach McCarthy has described the special teams as very green, and he said, I'm not talking about the jerseys on our back. He said, we're a green group on special teams. We got to get this figured out. That is question #1 to me right now. It's actually taken the place of the outside linebacker in the pass rush, because I think we've got some good things going. I may talk about that when we come back. This is going to be a 2-part episode, and I'll be back in just a little bit with another Out of Breath Arm Store Packer Minute. Part 2 sounds good. See you in a minute. Bye. Hey guys, I am back. In the first part of this Out of Breath Arm Store Packer Minute, we talked about special teams, which I know it's not the sexiest pick, but it's something that's on my mind. And as we saw in the Twitter feed already, the Packers are going hard after a punt returner. We know we had some issues with our kick coverage units last year at times, and we've got an undrafted free agent punter now, and so there are some serious questions there. In fact, that's kind of taken priority in my mind. I know if you watch my show on our Facebook page, you know me, and you know that I'm also concerned with the pass rush coming up, and the outside linebacker position in particular. I think the pass rush includes the inside linebacker position. I think it includes, in particular, the star cornerback. We know Clinton Dix. We know Dom Capers loves to send safeties, likes to send cornerbacks, especially from that star position. That's the closest position. And the inside linebacker is very important. I am afraid that this is a team that, other than a Josh Jones type, a hybrid guy, may not have a blitzing inside linebacker who can also cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. So the whole Josh Jones thing, I'm high on Josh Jones. I think he's going to do fine. But I do think there are questions still for the Packers in terms of the pass rush. And the first place you want to go is the outside linebacker position, because that's generally where the pass rush comes from. In a 3-4, we've got, in our base 3-4, you got your 3 down linemen, your 4 linebackers. Those outside guys become your edge rushers. And, the fact of the matter is we have a couple of good ones in Nick Perry and Clay Matthews. And I kind of put Nick Perry before Clay Matthews in that statement, I noticed, and I'm sure you noticed too. But the big time question mark is their health. And I just got done listening to Packers Unscripted this morning, which is back, by the way. If you don't listen to Packers Unscripted, you need to. You can just go to Packers.com. You'll find it, no problem. It's Wes and Spoff, getting on, talking about the Packers. And it's a great, great podcast. But Wes Hodkiewicz today made the comment that, people need to delineate between depth at outside linebacker and proven depth at outside linebacker. And proven depth at outside linebacker, I think, is something that the Packers have to some extent. I think it's a real complicated question now with the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to let this car pass real quick. It's more complicated than it seems on the surface because we have some proven depth. We don't have a lot. We have Clay Matthews. We have Nick Perry. The problem with those two guys is they're injury prone, and that becomes very rough. It becomes very rough to predict where the Packers pass rush is going to be when you have a couple of guys that availability is a problem for. And even finally, we get Nick Perry relatively healthy, and he misses 2 games with a broken hand and has to play with a club. I think he played well with the club when he had to. But, and I love seeing him pet that club when he made a sack, but still, this is a guy whose health is in question. And Clay Matthews, the same thing, not just with the shoulder, which I think is a significant and serious injury, but also with the hamstring that seems to be sort of a nagging thing. So in terms of depth versus proven depth, our proven depth guys are guys that, if you're Clay Matthews, if you're Nick Perry, availability has been a problem. Our other closest thing to proven depth guy is probably Jaron Elliott in terms of an edge rusher. And he hasn't been able to get on the field except when somebody's gotten injured. Now, that's partly because we have proven guys in front of him who tend to get injured. So we have seen him on the field. But this guy's been around. Jaron Elliott is a tough one to nail down. At times, he looks like a world beater. But he struggles to get reps on this team. And this is his year. To my mind, this is the year that Jaron Elliott shows his true colors and either proves it or it's time to just go the way of all people on the Packers defense, because he's either going to need to prove that he can be a consistent contributor or it's time to find somebody else. And we have a major, right now, I think it's hard to deny that this Packers team, you know, we've got some issues at outside linebacker. We got Vince Beagle, who has just put on the PUP list. We got Clay Matthews, who was injured significantly last year, tends to be injured, hamstrung every year, at least to some extent, has not been to full form since probably 2011 or 2012, is getting paid a lot of money. You got Nick Perry, who is perennially injured, and finally we get one good season out of him. Otherwise, Nick Perry would be considered a bust at this point. There's just no question about it. And now we got Vince Beagle on the PUP. So we're relying on Jaron Elliott, Kyler Fackrell. And I just got to be honest, I'm not super confident in this. And the whole argument, the difference between depth and proven depth, comes from the idea, I've been saying this for months, that the Packers won a Super Bowl back in 2010 with Frank Zombo at linebacker. And I've been talking about that for months. That is not news to me. Nor is it comforting, because that's not what you want going into a season. What you want going into a season is the best players you can possibly get at all of the premier positions. Those outside linebacker positions, you feel like you got squared away with Matthews and Nick Perry, but there are huge question marks there. Are these guys even going to be available? If they're not, all of a sudden the whole thing starts to fall like a house of cards. That was close. If anybody out there wants to disagree with this, I simply would call attention to last season, week 1. What happened after Sam Shields went down at the cornerback position? What happened to the defensive backfield of the Green Bay Packers? Let me ask you this. What happens when Clay Matthews is unavailable for the Green Bay Packers this year? He goes down, or you can interchange him. Nick Perry, same thing. What happens when they go down? Does anybody out there disagree that we have the possibility of a house of cards at the outside linebacker position, and we have 2 players who are our proven depth, who have proven that they have been unavailable at least for several games a season? This could be a real problem. So that is probably my, in terms of pass rush, really that should be the number 1 question mark, I think, going into training camp. I talked about the special teams first. They're on my mind recently, and I do think it's important. I talked about that. But if I was going to nail down probably my priority question, this is probably it. It was, where is the pass rush going to come from? We saw a pass rush that tended to disappear at times last year. I'm high on Kyler Fackrell to some extent. I've watched enough to be a little bit, conservative about where his ceiling is. I don't think he's a Clay Matthews. I like the idea of Vince Beagle getting out on the field, but when is Vince Beagle going to get out on the field? I like the idea of Jaron Elliott, who has, this nickname of Shakespeare because all he does is make plays. The only problem is he can't even get on the field, so how can he make plays? The only time he gets on the field is when somebody's injured. And when he gets on the field because somebody's injured, how many plays has he made? How many plays did he make last year? So obviously this is his opportunity. Personally, I think Dean Lowry may be the answer to the whole thing. He may be coming in looking more like an elephant linebacker to some extent. I've got this we're getting these rumblings, and, Dean Lowry's been moved outside more. However, to me, that somewhat signals a bit of desperation on the Packers, and almost it's almost as if they're admitting an admission of, we haven't gotten the guys that we need in place, so we're going to go ahead and move some folks around and see if they can perform. I like Dean Lowry. I really think he's going to have a great season. I think he actually could be great at the position. But again, that's not what we drafted him for. That's not what we get these guys in for. So we'll see what happens. But I do think the pass rush probably is my number 1 or number 2 concern. Let me know what your concerns are. I'm back home, and it's time to close this one up. But guys, I hope you have a great day. I hope you're enjoying the fact that football is back in town. Even though there are questions, that's what training camp is for. Is Jaron Elliott can get out there and perform. Clay Matthews can basically not perform and stay healthy. That's the thing. Let Nick Perry and Clay Matthews watch the whole training camp as long as they stay healthy. Preseason is around the corner, and I hope you guys are enjoying training camp. The rain is about to come down, and I'm going to let you see that real quick. And I just got under the roof, so this is pretty cool. All right, guys, you have a great day. I will talk to you again next time on the Out of Breath Arm Sore Packer Minute. We'll talk to you then. Go Pack. Hey guys, well, I thought I would do a third part. This is the Out of Breath Arm Sore Packer Minute. You've seen part 1, part 2, but I realized I got in the house, it just started raining, and then it quit actually, so I wasn't in any danger or anything of soaking my phone. But I realized that the first 2 parts of my sort of questions for training camp were pretty negative. And I'm not negative about this Green Bay Packers team, so I thought I'd do a third part because there is something else that I'm super interested in as training camp rolls around and continues on. The grind continues. We're not going to see a lot of him. I don't think we'll see a lot of him in even the preseason, but I am very interested in watching Martellus Bennett and Aaron Rodgers start getting on the same page. So that is what training camp is for, and I know even Rodgers himself, I think, has said, the defenses in preseason are so vanilla that really it's these training camp practices, the chance that they get to run the drills, to run the 7-on-7s and whatnot, and then actually talk about it afterwards, debrief on some things that are going to make it extremely important. The training camp practice is very important. And this connection between not just Aaron Rodgers and Martellus Bennett, but also Aaron Rodgers and Lance Kendricks is going to be super important. We're expecting a fantastic offense out of this Packers team this year, even though a lot of the question marks, fall on the defense, fall on the special teams, as I mentioned earlier, but a lot of the optimism, and frankly, I'm optimistic about the defense, even if my earlier talk about the outside linebacker position may have sort of sounded like I wasn't. I actually am. I'm quite positive about the defense as well, but one of the things that, generally speaking, Packer Nation in general is positive about is our offense. We feel like this offense is kind of ready to just blow the doors off of things come 2017 regular season. Now, I don't know how much we're going to see of Aaron Rodgers in the preseason. I don't know how much of a chance there's going to be for Aaron Rodgers to get on the same page with Martellus Bennett and Lance Kendricks in the preseason. But in training camp, I think this is the perfect time because in the preseason, you're showing something to someone. No matter what you do, if your plays are vanilla, the offensive sets are vanilla, the offensive plays are vanilla as well, just like the defenses are. But you are showing something to opposing teams. We got the Seahawks week 1. We got the Atlanta Falcons week 2. We come back with the Cincinnati Bengals before we finally get a team like the Bears on week 4. And in week 4 against the Bears, that's a team that knows us as well as any team in the league. So I think the fact that we're going to see very little, and I do believe we'll see very little, of Aaron Rodgers and Martellus Bennett in the preseason, even though I would like to see a little more than we did last year. So with that sort of disclaimer, we're not going to see a whole lot, I don't think, but I think we're going to roll out an offense that has Aaron Rodgers connecting with 6'6", 265, 270 Martellus Bennett over the middle. is able to move the chains on a regular basis. Don't forget Lance Kendricks in this whole thing. They're also going to be able to bring these guys in their 12 personnel with a single set back, 2 tight ends, a couple of wide receivers on top of that, splitting the outside, spreading the defense out, and they will be able to either run or have a play-action passing game out of that run threat from Ty Montgomery. And remember, Ty Montgomery, you got Lance Kendricks, you got Martellus Bennett, but Ty Montgomery can catch out of the backfield as well as anyone on the planet, I think, in terms of the running back position. So I am extremely excited about what this offense can do. I'm really, really stoked to see Aaron Rodgers and Martellus Bennett get on the same page, because I do think with the sort of big character, I mean, Martellus Bennett is sort of he's a character now. That's one thing we found out really fast. We saw him sleeping on the floor in the locker room. He's asked Packer Nation to give him his number. Once he got his number from Packer Nation, he found out it was number 80, Donald Driver's number. He said he's not comfortable with that. He's asking the league to maybe change his number because of that. He's done a lot of things right, but the fact of the matter is, this is a season in which there will probably be some, again, they're just like last year. There's going to be some, it's not going to be a perfect season. There's going to be some bumps in the road. And how does Martellus Bennett and Aaron Rodgers, how do they respond to the bumps in the road? And I think with Aaron Rodgers is the perfect quarterback for a guy like Martellus Bennett. He's just a calm guy, but he's a calm guy who gets the job done. Look at a Jay Cutler like Martellus Bennett had years ago. He's a calm guy who can't get the job done. He can't lead the ship. All he can do is throw interceptions to the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, is the kind of the polar opposite of that, and he is the calm guy, but he's a guy that gets the job done. And you add to that the Jordy Nelsons, the Ty Montgomery coming back, the Randall Cobb veteran, and Devontae Adams, who's coming into a contract year, a very good offensive line that Martellus Bennett, Lance Kendricks are going to add to, and I think good things are in store for this Packers offense. So with that said, I'm excited to see Aaron Rodgers connect with Martellus Bennett and Lance Kendricks. And I didn't even talk about Richard Rodgers in this, who has done a lot of good things for the Packers. So I thought I'd add that in. I felt like we should have 3 questions going into training camp anyway. So here it is. Now, this is a massive, massive out-of-breath Armstrong Packer minute. So if it's too much for you, I totally understand. This is more than a minute. I know that. But when all is said and done, I wanted to make sure that I talked about some of the things I'm excited about. And there are so many other things that might be question marks that I'm still excited about. Look at the rookie running back position. Question marks, but I'm excited about them. Look at where Josh Jones is actually going to land. What will Josh Jones be in the Packers defense? Question mark, but I'm totally excited about it. There's all kinds of good things coming. When will Vince Beagle actually take the field? Question mark. Got put on the pup list. But I am excited about Vince Beagle as well, all right? So I'm going to close it with that. Wanted to end on a high note because I know you guys are stoked. I'm stoked too, I promise you. There are a couple questions up front that I do want to see answered in terms of the special teams that McCarthy has called green, and I do have some concerns about where our pass rush is going to come from if history repeats itself. And that's the only thing. If history repeats itself, then we'll probably have Clay Matthews and Nick Perry out for a game or two. Hopefully none more than that. I want to knock on wood. But then on the backside of that is an offense that's going to be very high-powered, going to be able to outscore people, probably when we need to outscore people, teams. And that may be the case from time to time, but I think we're up for the task. And Martellus Bennett being a big part of that, Lance Kendricks too, Richard Rodgers, your Devontae Adams, your Nelson, Jordy Nelson, your Randall Cobb, I lost his name for a second, your Ty Montgomery. I mean, the list goes on and on. Jari Evans coming in, shoring up where TJ Lang has gone. The list goes on and on. Corey Linsley is cleared to play. Another good thing. The best left tackle in the business, David Bakhtiari, against the pass, as far as I'm concerned. Good things coming for the offense. I think positive things for the defense, just more question marks there. And for me, mainly, let's get this special team squared away. And this is going to be one heck of a Packers team for 2017. All right, just thought I'd close with that, guys. You have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Go Pack, go.